A guy that you've talked about for the last few weeks. He's supposedly supposed to commit sometime this month. Brock Glen, the quarterback target. He was in Columbus, Ohio, visiting the Buckeyes this weekend. And it sounds like he had a good time and a good experience. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same. Brock was really coveted in terms of this last visit over the weekend. A lot of programs were trying to position themselves to try to get in one of these trips because he had taken so many on the front end of June that there was really almost a recruiting win within itself for Ohio State to get the visit alone, much less with him actually taking it. So once he actually went up there with family, certainly impressed with Ohio State, kind of the entire layout of their plan for the quarterback position. Certainly they've had, easy to see success at that spot and really everywhere across their offense over the last 10 years or so. And that's something that they certainly sold to him. But I've always had caution with late programs in for Brock. I mean, I think no disrespect to Ohio State or anyone else jumping in. I mean, you talk to him and he hammers the relationship buzzword, right? There's usually, like in recruiting, you hear certain words very frequently, right? NFL, playing time, NIL is going to become the next one, we think. But relationships are one of them. And I think the long-standing relationship with some of these other programs, Auburn certainly, even TCU, Virginia, Mississippi State, those programs have such an advantage over Ohio State, which is not something we say very often because of the time that they have already invested into Brock Glen and his family. So Ohio State knows it's playing catch up in this race. It's kind of reshifted its entire quarterback focus to Brock Glen and Austin Novosad, the Baylor quarterback commitment, who's also headed to the Elite 11 finals. Neither feels like it's a home run for Ohio State at this point. So I do think that there's still a lot of optimism from the Auburn perspective with Brock Glen in particular, who again this week confirmed he would like to go to the Elite 11, which starts next Tuesday. He'd like to go there as a verbally committed prospect. Now, certainly if he pauses, it's understandable. It's Ohio State. We get it. But if he doesn't and he follows through in the next few days, you got to feel good about Auburn's chances.
Yeah, I mean, that's not long at all when you look at kind of this deadline that he's put himself on. Florida State, he was there the week before. You hardly ever mention them. Are they a factor here at all?
I think some. He had a relationship with some previous assistants at FSU that are no longer there, particularly offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham, who's now up at Oregon, obviously a former Auburn assistant as well. So I think that was that combination would have been a true threat in my mind to Auburn from the Florida State perspective. But they've had a lot of fluctuation with their own recruiting plan. Ohio State has projected like a total reset. FSU seems like it's got its head on a swivel. They had one quarterback committed for a long time who's a friend of Brock's, another Tennessean in Chris Parson. And all of a sudden they offered Brock Glen, they offered Ricky Collins, the Purdue verbal commitment, and they had this kind of aggressive plan to take a second quarterback. And now it looks like the first quarterback, Chris Parsons, not going to end up at Florida State. So there's a little bit of, I guess, weird vibes right now with Florida State quarterback recruiting. And again, those relationships are much newer for Brock with Mike Norvell and company. Not sure Norvell was high on Glenn as an eighth grader when he was the head coach at Memphis. Some those connections and that familiarity certainly was intriguing enough to FSU to get him down on the visit. But I don't think it was enough to overcome Auburn. And again, I think Mississippi State's still in this race a little bit as well, although they've casted a little bit of a wider net, including hosting Chris Parson, who is that FSU commitment for a visit lately. There's a lot of quarterback shuffling going on is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of that is because of the relationships and the fluctuating nature of college football in the last 12 months. So I think Brian Harsin and company, that kind of continuity as of this winter time, and him obviously so familiar with campus beyond the X's and O's and football itself, I do think that creates such an advantage for the Tigers. So yeah, I'd be surprised if he ended up at FSU at this point.
What does Brock Glen mean for Auburn? I mean, obviously, and you and I have talked about this before, the importance of having a quarterback in every class, right? And I think that speaks for itself. Get talented passers on campus, let the chips fall where they fall. If guys leave, they leave, but you want as many options as possible when it comes to talented quarterbacks. So obviously, it appears that Brock Glen is Auburn's choice, but what does it mean if they get him? I mean, Holden Geriner appears to be the guy that's going to be after the guy, whoever wins the starting job
Right.
here, and he's going to be at Auburn for a long time, presumably. I think Geriner has more upside than Glen does. You may think differently. I don't know, but his path to playing time isn't clear. It's not obvious. Now, obviously, he could come in and win the job, and that would be great for Glen. It'd be great for Harsin. It'd be great for the Auburn fan base, whatever. Is it more than that? Is it more like, can they get some momentum on the recruiting front, or is this strictly hey, this could potentially be Auburn's quarterback and it stops there?
I think it's both, Zach.
Yeah.
Like you said, Auburn it's felt like they've been on the cusp, right? Like one guy's going to pop, and then all of a sudden these dominoes are going to fall.
What it feels
There's going to be some momentum. So I think Glen's got to be the spark. I think he's got to be the Kickstarter to that campaign. And then other guys who are closing in on decisions, whether it's Carmelo English, Jeremiah Cobb, Keldrick Falk, a lot of guys that we know are really high on Auburn. Then all of a sudden you could start to see some dominoes falling towards Brian Harsin and company. But yeah, I think Glen's got to be that Kickstarter. But I also think it's the other thing. I think he is a potential long-term quarterback option. You have to bring in a quarterback every year. We talk about it all the time because you got to create depth. And right now at AU, it's a bunch of transfers already, right? It's a bunch of guys who've already started their clock from an eligibility standpoint. And you just know whoever loses the battle, certainly the guy who finishes third is out. And there's the potential for the loser of the battle, primarily the second place guy, to maybe be out one day. So it is very tangibly important for Auburn to land a quarterback in this class, because this entire room could be turned over in about 12 months. So getting another Elite 11 type guy, you got one in Geriner last year, getting one in Glen this year, I think would be kind of the perfect bridge to maybe shooting your shot with a different style of quarterback in 2024. But in the short term, Brock Glen, especially with the kind of kid he is, he's a kid you talk to him once and you root for him after that.
Yeah.
Once he gets around other recruits, I do think it starts a little bit of a snowball effect for the Tigers on the trail, especially with the timing, right? If he commits and then it's Elite 11, national attention, it's like the year of the quarterback, everyone's there, all media outlets, all that stuff. It's kind of easy to see it forming should that happen, especially with offensive targets. And we know right now with the Tigers, I think that's where more question marks may lie from a recruiting perspective on offense versus defense. So I think the timing would be equally as important.